Teens look at Alzheimer's disease. Part 1. What is Alzheimer's disease? Welcome to the Alzheimer's Association. You're probably here because someone in your family has Alzheimer's disease or a friend is dealing with it. Spend a few minutes with us learning about the disease and how some other people like you are coping. Are you the only one you know who has a family member with Alzheimer's disease? You may think you are, but chances are you really aren't. There are over 5 million Americans living with Alzheimer's disease, and 15 million people are providing care for them. There may be lots of other people you know who are in the same situation, but just haven't talked with you about it. Believe it or not, there are hundreds of thousands of kids out there living with a family member who has the disease. That is a gigantic number of kids who come face to face with Alzheimer's disease every single day. Watch this quick video to learn the facts. So what is Alzheimer's disease? We'll start by talking about dementia. The word dementia is like the word food. It is an umbrella term, and there are lots of different types. Just like there are lots of things to eat that fit under the category of food, there are lots of diseases that fit under the umbrella term dementia. And in a restaurant, you don't order food, you choose which type you want. In the same way, dementia is a big category. There's no actual disease called dementia. There are lots of diseases that are types of dementia. The word dementia refers to a set of symptoms and includes major changes in memory, mood, personality, and brain function that cause problems with everyday life. It can affect a person's ability to do math, find the way home from a store, or know what day it is. Dementia is caused by lots of different things, including diseases like Alzheimer's disease, vascular dementia, caused by many tiny strokes, or other diseases you may never have heard of, like Lewy body disease and frontotemporal dementia. About 70% of the time, the diagnosis is Alzheimer's, but there are many other dementia diseases and their causes, symptoms, and treatments can be very different. Sometimes people have dementia symptoms that are curable or treatable. These could be caused by a vitamin deficiency, bad reaction to medication, severe infection, or other medical condition. So it is always important to get a diagnosis and find out what a person is really dealing with. If the diagnosis is a dementia disease like Alzheimer's, this means the symptoms will gradually get worse over time. Alzheimer's is progressive, has no cure, and is eventually fatal. But in most people, the disease progresses very slowly. People often live 4 to 8 years after a diagnosis, but some live up to 20 years. Each person is different, and their experience with dementia will be unique. Most of the time, people are diagnosed with Alzheimer's after age 65, and the risk grows the older they get. However, about 200,000 people in America have Alzheimer's in their 40s, 50s, and 60s. This is called younger onset Alzheimer's. In this video clip, we see a man named Alan who has Alzheimer's disease, which is the most common form of dementia. His disease started earlier in his life than it usually does, so he has what's called younger onset Alzheimer's disease, which means that it started before the age of 65. If you have a parent with Alzheimer's disease, they will probably have younger onset Alzheimer's. If you have a grandparent with the disease, they could have the more typical kind of Alzheimer's that starts after the person is 65. In this video clip, Alan, who was an airline pilot, describes early signs of dementia that he noticed in himself.
We live in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Now, we moved out there from the West Coast. My wife and I were both employed by the airlines, Pacific Southwest Airlines, and then U.S. Air. And we moved out to Pittsburgh in '93. And as far as the diagnosis goes, I had been a pilot for 30 years for U.S. Airways, and was going through an international training course to fly internationally, and I'd made a couple of crossings of the Atlantic, and was having some problems calculating simple things like fuel burns. I mean, not to get technical, but you launch across the ocean, you really need to know your fuel situation, and you have checkpoints that predicated fuel burns all the way across, and every so many degrees of latitude you add it up and make sure that your burn is at or better than what you need to keep going. It's simple math, that just adding and subtracting, and I was having trouble getting the right answers. I was making mistakes with general math and having some memory problems. There's a lot of chatter on the radio, and a lot of it comes in really fast. And we used to joke around that you could read a newspaper, tell a joke, and not miss a radio call, because you could multitask. And I wasn't having problems reading back clearances, and one thing led to another, and I went back for a check ride and failed the check ride.
Want to see how Alzheimer's affects the brain? At the end of this program, you can click a link to take the brain tour, where you'll be able to look at how the brain works normally and what changes in the brain with Alzheimer's disease. In each individual, the course of Alzheimer's disease is different. Some people with the disease become more agitated, while others get more calm and even-tempered. The changes are easiest to see early in the disease and may be about mood, memory, or getting lost. Most of the time, Alzheimer's disease is described as having 3 stages: early, middle, and late. It's important to keep in mind that everyone's progression through the disease is different, and that people may appear to be in more than one stage at the same time. Which stage they are in doesn't matter as much as understanding how the person is functioning and making sure that they get what they need. For someone in the early stage of Alzheimer's disease, even before getting a diagnosis, there are symptoms that are often written off as just normal signs of aging. People in the earlier stage may put their belongings in unusual spots and be unable to retrace their steps to find them. They may have trouble finding the words for things when speaking and may have difficulty following conversations. They may get lost easily in familiar places. Recent memory loss is the hallmark of early-stage Alzheimer's disease. People may remember things from a long time ago very clearly, but have no idea what they had for breakfast or if they took their medicine. All of these changes can take an emotional toll, and they may become frustrated more quickly than usual. People in the early stages of Alzheimer's disease can do a lot and live very full lives. They just need help and understanding in the areas that become difficult. As the disease progresses, symptoms increase. People in the middle stage often need help with paying bills, buying and cooking food, and taking care of their physical needs like dressing and bathing. They are no longer able to drive by the time the disease progresses to this point and are more dependent on others for help in many or most areas of their lives. By the late stage, people with Alzheimer's are unable to care for themselves at all, and their needs often go beyond what can be provided at home, even with assistance from others. The disease progression leads to difficulty with eating and swallowing, and eventually affects the ability of the heart and lungs to keep the person alive. In the late stages of Alzheimer's disease, Both short-term and long-term memory are severely affected. Language is reduced to just a few words, and communication with the person is simplified to short sentences and body language. People need more personal care and may have trouble recognizing family members. Eventually, the person needs care around the clock. Part 2. What can I expect and how can I deal with it? When someone is in the earliest stage of Alzheimer's disease, you may be surprised to discover that they have the diagnosis. You may or may not have noticed the changes in the person, but the changes are pretty subtle most of the time. Throughout the middle stages, there are a lot of interesting ways to interact. You can try engaging the person in a simplified version of something they used to love. If they always liked to garden, they could help you plant a few pots of flowers or hold a bag while you pull some weeds. Or you can watch an old movie together and talk about what's happening as it goes along. The key is to talk about what they are interested in at the moment, instead of expecting them to understand what is on your mind. During the middle stage, the person may gradually change in how they relate to you. They may have problems getting your name right, or they may seem really moody. That's because of the disease. It is a reflection of how their brain is changing. Some people describe it like this. It's as if someone's life story is written on a blackboard and the story is being erased from right now backwards to the beginning of their life. Things from a long time ago are still clear, while recent events or conversations may be foggy. Here are some tips that may make it easier when communicating with someone in the middle stage. Make eye contact. Use short, simple sentences. Speak slowly, gently, and calmly, and listen attentively. If you don't live with the person with Alzheimer's, it will feel different when you visit him or her in the later stages of their disease. The person may not remember that you're coming to see them, even if they had a reminder recently. There are some things you can do to help make that easier. When you approach them, walk up to them slowly and say something like, "Hi, Grandpa, it's your grandson Alan. It's nice to see you." If the person has a hard time remembering who you are or calls you by a different name, it can be hard. But try to remember that it's about their disease and the progressive changes that come with it. It's easiest for you and for them to just go along with what they're saying instead of trying to correct them. Take your time and just be with the person. Part 3. If the person with Alzheimer's lives with us, what can I expect? Sometimes the person with Alzheimer's disease already lives with you. Other times, in the middle or late stage of the disease, the person with Alzheimer's disease may need to move in with family members or to a care facility in order to be safe and get the care they need. If they do make a move, the person will be making huge changes in his or her life, and this is sometimes stressful. Keep in mind that someone who is having difficulty with dementia symptoms has a harder time with change than they would have before. Adding or losing members of your household can be really hard for you too. Just ask someone who has added stepbrothers and stepsisters to their families, or who had a parent move out. Adding a family member with Alzheimer's disease to your household is a big change for everyone involved. Many times, family members are glad to be able to help the person with Alzheimer's and look forward to expressing their love for the person through providing care. But it can feel especially challenging if the person is showing some mood swings or unpredictable behavior that can go with Alzheimer's. You may feel stressed, angry, or embarrassed, and then guilty for feeling those things. You may feel both negative and positive feelings toward the person at the same time, or you might experience the same thing that Tori does in this next video.
I never really felt resentment towards my dad, mostly because I kind of knew it wasn't his fault, and he couldn't help it. I did feel some towards my mom sometimes. I can't explain to you why. I guess it's because she was the healthy parent, and it was easier to put blame on her because it didn't seem as bad as putting blame on my dad, especially since I was so close to my dad before he did get sick. Never really towards my dad.
There is a broad range of feelings that you may be having, and all of them are totally normal to feel in such a hard situation. A lot of times, kids with a family member with Alzheimer's feel sad, angry, or frustrated about what's happening, especially if the person is living with them. You might sometimes wish the person wasn't there anymore. And when kids feel that way, they usually feel guilty about having those feelings. You might sometimes feel like nobody would understand what you're going through. Sometimes your parents may have arguments about your family member who has Alzheimer's disease, or about who is doing the work of taking care of the person. You might find yourself getting involved in those arguments too. Or you might feel like you want to hold back your feelings from others in the house who are providing care because they have so much to deal with already. It's normal to want to avoid stressful situations, and if home is providing the stress, you may want to get away from the house a lot of the time. In the next video, you'll see Kat, who is Tori's sister, talking about how they coped with their father's younger onset Alzheimer's disease.
Me and my sister got really close throughout my dad's progression because we were the only ones that knew exactly what the other one was going through. And we could sit down and talk to each other and just have a one-on-one conversation, and it would be exactly what we needed to hear from each other. And I think that the most important thing with this disease is to have someone to talk through the whole time.
The best advice that kids give for dealing with their lives while they deal with Alzheimer's is to talk about it. Talking can help take the pressure off of you to deal with it on your own. It lets other people help you come up with ideas, solutions, and alternatives. And you know how you feel when you help a friend with a problem? You feel sad for them, but good that you can help? Well, they feel the same way when they help you, so talking with them lets your friends and family show that they love you and care about you. Lindsay has talked with her friends about her father's Alzheimer's disease, as she tells us in the next video.
I talk to my friends a lot about this disease. I swear my school is the most informed school on Alzheimer's. I'm not trying to hide it or keep it inside. I want to let everyone know. And so my friends have been really supportive, and even some of them have Alzheimer's in their family. So it's really nice that we can all share this.
It's good to keep in mind that the person in your life with Alzheimer's disease acts the way they do because they have a disease. Just like other kids who have a family member with cancer or diabetes or heart disease, you have a family member with a disease. No one likes to be embarrassed, so remember that if the person with Alzheimer's does something that embarrasses you in front of a friend, let your friend know it's because the person has a disease. This way you can stand up for a family member and take a step toward reducing the false ideas that some people have about what Alzheimer's disease is all about. You are a student, a son or daughter, a friend, and a unique person, and you have a right to do what everyone else your age does about connecting with your friends and breaking away from family. This is your job as a teenager. But how do you do that when your family is stressed? Talk and tell people how you feel, even if there is nothing that can change. It helps just to say it. Tell a trusted adult, friends, even those family members who are making your life harder. Look to find a balance between family and your life as a separate individual. You have rights and obligations in both areas. You can also write about your feelings, make a song, create a video, or write a blog. There's a YouTube video online called My Name is Lisa. The link is right below this presentation. Part 4. How can I help and what's out there to help me? Want to do something about Alzheimer's? There are a lot of ways you can make a difference. The most important thing you can do is to talk honestly and openly about Alzheimer's disease. People have all kinds of mistaken ideas about what Alzheimer's is and what it isn't, and how important the person with Alzheimer's is. You can tell the truth. Got a school project to do for a health or science class? Make it a project about Alzheimer's. This one is a multitasker. You get lots of information easily on this website, do an impressive project, and inform your friends about the disease in the process. It may even be a way to let people know about your connection to Alzheimer's. You can also friend the Alzheimer's Association on Facebook to get updates on the latest in research and information. Do you want to do more? You can help raise money for more research into the causes and treatments for Alzheimer's disease and support for families going through this experience. Hey, Seth Rogen is doing it. Take a look at the link below to see some photos of him raising money for Alzheimer's. You can start a team for the Walk to End Alzheimer's. You can also talk with your school administrators about doing an awareness project at school, like the girls in the link below did in their elementary school. As the family member of someone with Alzheimer's disease, you might be surprised how many resources there are out there to give you information and support. Some of the best are listed in the links below. Check out what interests you and think of ways to follow up to get support or help make a difference. Remember, it helps to talk it over, and even if nothing really changes about this situation, talking about it can relieve pressure on you. Lots of people are very happy to help, including the Alzheimer's Association. We have a 24/7, 365 helpline where you can talk to trained specialists who can answer any questions or just provide a shoulder to lean on. Just call 1-800-272-3900 anytime, day or night. There are links below that will get you to the Alzheimer's Association's Facebook and Twitter pages. And finally, don't forget to check out My Name is Lisa on YouTube. Thanks!